Howdy, folks. Thanks for tuning in for another cruise with Smooth. Hope y'all are sorry about that. Hope y'all are doing okay. Jeez. So, couple things I want to talk about today, and due to the news cycle that we currently live in, none of it's going to be fun to talk about. Yesterday, I saw that there was the footage, or the police body cam footage, which is from just about the start of the cops' interaction with George Floyd up to the point where he ended up on the ground, which is where one of the people that was with Mr. Floyd, I believe, I'm not sure who recorded that, but the police body cam footage became available. And there was 8 minutes and change of video from the police body cam. So I watched all of it, and okay, I can say, here's what I'm going to have to say. I don't agree with what Officer Derek Chauvin did, putting his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for that length of time. I've heard too many people that are big in combat communities, combat sports, MMA, karate, taekwondo, stuff like that, and they all say that is a submission move, that you would do that until someone passes out or until they tap out. That's not like a long-term, hey, I'm going to hold you here till we cool off and then I'm going to throw you in the cop car. That's not a ideal maneuver for something like that. I also personally think that, okay, so I think Derek Chauvin acted 100% improperly. Okay, so I'm going to start there with the knee to the back of the neck. No way that's appropriate. Okay, but the footage that was gathered from there was a security camera or something on a building, and the footage that was from the cell phone video did not give the full story. Shocker of all shockers. And Mr. Floyd, when the cops pulled up and started talking to him, they couldn't see both hands. They were standing somewhat behind the driver's door of the vehicle, and the cop drew his weapon just until he got Mr. Floyd's hands visible, and once George was hanging onto the steering wheel, the cop reholstered his gun. Well, he gets him out of his car, they talk, he resists going into handcuffs, and they get him to the cop car, and he's just about refusing to go into the cop car. And okay, you can say they shouldn't have arrested him for that, whatever. That's fine. The cops exist to enforce laws that are written by the local and state government. So, if you don't want passing counterfeit money to be a crime, or you don't want it to carry a jail sentence, that's fine. Contact your representative. Well, anyway, he kept saying the whole time, even while he's in his own vehicle before the cops try to cuff him, that he can't breathe. He keeps saying that when they get him to the cop car, he keeps saying that he's seriously claustrophobic and he's on the verge of a breathing episode. And so the cops are like, look, we'll blast the AC, we'll roll the windows down, whatever we got to do, we'll make sure that you got plenty of air to breathe. They can't get him to go into the car. Like, they've got him sitting in it, but he won't pull his legs in so they can shut the door. Well, he keeps resisting, so a cop, I believe this would have been Officer Chauvin. I don't know who the body cam footage was from, but they went around to the other side of the car and tried to pull Mr. Floyd through. Well, he pushed the officer back with his feet. Like, the cop had a hold of Mr. Floyd's back. Mr. Floyd pushed off, and they ended up going out of the other side of the car, and that's kind of when the cell phone video that everybody knows picks up. Now, during this whole time, in the 8 minutes and 20-30 seconds of the video that I watched, Officer Chauvin was not acting in a aggressive manner, and he was not acting in a racist manner. He said no disparaging racial remarks. He said no hateful remarks. That if you just behave yourself, none of this wouldn't happen. I wouldn't have been here. Nothing. He maintained his cool through the whole video. That doesn't excuse what he did. But here is what I look to happen. There's such a thing as prosecutorial overcharging. And what that means, okay, say I got pulled over for running 15 over the posted speed limit. Well, in my state, once you cross the 15 mile an hour mark of over, so once you cross the 16, that's considered reckless driving. So, say I'm running 20 over. That's 20 over posted and a reckless driving fine. And then, okay, well, suppose a cop pulls me over for running 16 over, says, you were doing 20 over. No, I wasn't, sir. And I've got a dash cam that records my GPS speed, so I can prove, hey, I wasn't doing this, I was doing that. And then he says, that was through a school zone. No, it wasn't. And I've got the dash cam footage to prove how fast I was going. And, well, you did this, that, or the other, and that's wanton endangerment or reckless endangerment, or, he just keeps tacking on and on and on and on other things. Well, there is a strong likelihood that since the cop did not charge what he could prove, but just tried to throw the book at me, that I could end up getting out of any sentence for that due to the fact that the cop overcharged me. If he would have wrote a 16 over and reckless, or even a reckless or a 10 over or whatever, I've had a cop do a favor on a ticket for me. I've had it happen once or twice, actually, because of who I am as a human being. So you could have that instance where the cop didn't overcharge, and as a defendant, you've got no serious way to get out of it unless you can prove that the cop's radar gun was off, or he caught someone else in the radar trap, or whatever. You've got no real recourse, like, oh, well, I was speeding, but no, you were speeding as fast as the cop said. So in the case of Officer Shalvin, they went with murder in the third degree originally. And what I honestly look to have happen, and I'm not speaking to guilt or innocence or motive or whether it was right or wrong, and I'm definitely not saying that Officer Shalvin was justified in the way he handled Mr. Floyd. Okay? So don't misunderstand that, please. I think that Officer Shalvin used poor police work to control the situation with Mr. Floyd, and I don't think that it warranted what he did. Even if Mr. Floyd had lived, I don't think it warranted his response. Okay? But murder in the third degree would essentially be, I'm doing something capable of killing someone and they accidentally die because I do it. As an example, if I am shooting a firearm, and I'm no legal expert on all this, so feel free to critique, correct, or post the statutes for Minnesota, since all this is where this is from, in the comments. I'd be more than happy to be proven wrong on this. But murder in the third is, it's legal to do lethal actions. Example, target shooting. If I was target shooting and there was a inadvertent lethal consequence of that, target shooting. Target shooting is 100% legal, Second Amendment, blah, blah, blah. But I had a firearm accident due to ricocheting a bullet, due to careless discharge of a gun, take your pick. And I ended up killing somebody. That could be charged as murder 3 or murder 4. In Minnesota, when you cross over into murder in the second degree, there is a level of premeditation required for a guilty conviction. Meaning that on some level, Officer Shalvin had to want to kill Mr. Floyd. And the prosecution has to prove that. Okay? So, not only does Mr. Shalvin have to, this guy's just scum, I wish he'd just die, or I've known this guy for years, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm going to kill him because he did work they were co-workers as bouncers at a nightclub where they'd had disagreements. So, I don't know if the prosecutor can prove on a murder 2 charge that Mr. Chauvin made the decision on the scene, on that arrest scene, to kill Mr. Floyd. I don't know. I don't know all the evidence. I know the videos, I know the images, I know the autopsy reports. That's about all I know. I don't know any of the witness testimony, because Mr. Floyd, when he was pulled over, there were some other people in the vehicle. So, but I think it would be very easy to get a not guilty or a mistrial on a murder 2 charge just because there's premeditation involved. It's very possible that Trayvon Martin's, or that George Zimmerman could have ended up in jail if the prosecutor would have went for a lesser charge. That doesn't mean that you take the crime less seriously. What it means is there are gradations of crime, or even a murder. Okay, for example, someone breaks into my house. I'm not really interested in asking questions on why they're there. I'm interested in protecting my family. So, someone breaks in my house and I kill them, the cops show up, there could very well end up being a trial for that. That's fine. But they would likely charge me with it would likely be filed as a justifiable homicide. In my state, you have what's known as castle law. Once someone breaks into your castle, you are allowed to defend yourself and your loved ones with lethal force. Now take the same thing, someone and I get into a yelling or cussing match at a bar, or at a restaurant, or in a parking lot, or a road rage incident, and I pop that person. That gets way more complicated. That could even be a murder charge. Okay? So it doesn't mean that you take the crime less seriously. There's different gradations of the same action. Also, like speeding. You can run 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, and that's, 1 mile an hour over. You can run 50 over, and all of a sudden you are a danger to everybody within 300 feet of your car. So the murder 1, 2, 3, 4 in most states, it shows the gradation. Like Dexter's murder 1 in every case, because he's stalking his targets, finding the pattern, finding where to snatch them, planning everything so perfectly careful. So I think that the prosecutor set up a very difficult conviction for himself on murder 2. And again, I don't know all the evidence. Personally, I hope he gets a conviction, because I do not believe that Derek Chauvin deserves to be free right now. I don't believe that Derek Chauvin deserved to be a police officer. I believe that George Floyd's death was an unnecessary one, and that he died at the hands of a man who was incapable of fulfilling his duties as a law enforcement officer. Now, a lot of people have been talking about defund the police. I am so not on board with that. This is not just my opinion. I've heard numerous takes on it. Okay. Everything that a cop has on their belt that is meant to be pointed at someone and used is a good thing. Okay? And you've got pepper spray, taser, gun, and there was actually a test a while back of a thing that you can fit over a good percentage of standard issue police sidearms. It goes over the slide and, pardon me, and covers the whole slide, so cops always walk around with their guns loaded. If they're in a situation where they think they might have to shoot somebody, they can put this on. It's heavier, but it slows the projectile way down, and it ends up taking the whole thing, so it's yay long, at the suspect, and it produces a broader point of impact. It essentially turns your lethal sidearm into a one-shot non-lethal beanbag. So it catches the bullet, slows the bullet down, and travels at the suspect. Sorry about that, folks. Text from my kid's school. And they can load that on as necessary or take it off. So the first shot out of their gun can be a non-lethal. I'm a fan of that. I think that provided that... Now, this is a few years ago, so it might not have been 100% effective. Might not have been a reliable non-lethal, but if it is, I'm a fan of that. I'm a fan of pepper spray. I'm a fan of tasers, because everything that you put on that cop's tool belt, so to speak, that he can use against a violent suspect is one thing between that cop and having to pull the trigger of a loaded firearm with the intention of seriously wounding or killing somebody. So I'm a fan of every non-lethal that we give cops. I think that all cops should be pretty well trained in hand-to-hand combat, whether that's martial arts or something, but something where they're trained very well in how to use minimal strength to get someone on the ground and in a hole that they can't get out of. That's non-lethal. And the reason why I say that is one more thing between the suspect and that cop having to pull the trigger. So if you take a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and he decides, you know what, I'm going to wrestle that cop. And suppose he's just stronger than that cop or whatever, and the cop can't subdue him to the ground and can't get control of the situation. Guess what? That cop has pepper spray. Or that cop has a taser. If the guy is high off his butt on meth, which I have seen videos where people under the influence of certain illicit drugs don't flinch when they get tased. So if that guy's off his butt on crystal meth or something, that cop's got pepper spray. If the guy forces through the pain of that, then he's got the one non-lethal firearm shot that would potentially break a rib if put on center mass, but he'd be okay. If that doesn't do anything, then finally he's got his sidearm, if that's what he needs to use to defend himself and the lives of those in the general area. So you've got hand-to-hand combat with good submission holds. You've got the taser. You've got pepper spray. You've got one non-lethal shot. So you've got four things for that cop to run through before he has to pull his gun in a hand-to-hand situation. And I think that cops should be really good at hand-to-hand combat, and most of them really aren't. Rashard Brooks bulldozed two cops and stole one of their tasers. Now, I know very few people that are fighters real big, whether it's, in the professional or just, they enjoy running their mouth and getting into scraps. I know of one or two people that have had a successful fight where they took on more than one person. And most of them were actually trained in, martial arts or jiu-jitsu or something. very few people that are just brawlers take on more than one person successfully, especially if they're similarly sized. So Rashard Brooks was a better fighter than the cops that came to the Wendy's drive-thru that night. Anyway, I reckon I've said all I need to say. I've been recording for almost 30 minutes. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I haven't been on lately. There's just so much news that's honestly got me down. With literally everything that's going on from coronavirus protests, aftermath of riots, politics and everything. I don't know if this mess gets better or worse. And frankly, I don't know if the election changes anything for the better. Oh, and okay, for very few reasons I'm pulling for Trump. For very few. I'm seriously considering voting for Jo Jorgensen. I do need to look up a little bit about her. But even if we put, and I don't care who it is, you can take your pick, but if you could get a standardized test that would test people for world leadership skills, and if you could get the smartest, best, most qualified, most empathetic, most savvy, the best negotiator in the White House, I don't know how we recruit from where we're at right now. I really don't. So I think there's too much mistrust everywhere, for starters. And I think it goes downhill rapidly from there. So I'm not holding out high hopes for any rapid resolution to the problems that we currently find ourselves facing. I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for coronavirus to die out in a month or so, and that kind of be the end of it. And I'd like for the civil unrest to die down. I'd like for people to quit vandalizing courthouses and cop cars and burning stuff. So I just don't see it happening. So anyway, I've gone on long enough. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Take care. This has been another Cruise with Smooth. See y'all next time.